Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, episode 123.
Wireless LAN Professionals is a place to educate, inform, encourage, and entertain those involved in wireless LANs. This Wireless LAN Professionals podcast is an audio manifestation of these goals. Our host is a wireless LAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher, Keith Parsons. And now, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals.
Hello, this is Keith Parsons, and I'm here with Wireless LAN Professionals podcast. And today we're just going to have a little short introduction to something we started last year called the Wireless LAN Community Compensation Benchmark Survey. Big fancy name for something we put together. It was initially started because there was a CBNP had posted this kind of funny looking graph showing some massive 200K plus for CWNEs. It felt a little outrageous, a little over the top. And we thought, I wonder if, and it came from a recruiting agency's data set. And I just had this feeling that maybe the recruiting agencies were a little optimistic. So I thought, oh, maybe we should do a survey. So I worked with a guy named Donald from Candidate, a company over in Dublin, who we met at a couple of WLPCs ago. And we went through and had about 15 questions total and sent it out to the wireless LAN community, got about 1,000 responses, which from a statistical standpoint gives us really good statistical data. And what we were looking for is to find out what people's compensation looks like. We found some really good information. And in the show notes, you'll see a link to last year's report about it. One of the things we talk about there is the difference between correlation and causation. We had a lot of data that we collected showed a high correlation between one or two or different items. That doesn't mean that there's causation. There's a high correlation between number of nights you sleep away from home. That doesn't mean that if you go sleep in hotels, you're going to get paid more money. Even though the effect is you get people who have more pay spend more nights away from home. So we talked through a little bit of some basic statistics of how they work, how the T-tails work, and how when we look at data set, we're looking to see if we can get something consistent. We're always going to get a bell curve, but where is the bell curve? Is it have high standard deviation, low standard deviation, et cetera? And in the results, after we had run this, 1,000 people, we got some really good compensation numbers, both for the U.S., Europe, and obviously enough data that we felt really confident in putting this out. But there were some questions that we still had after we ran the survey. Some of the questions that we asked, we thought were going to be very, very telling, perhaps even something that we could use to help predict the future of where someone's income might show up. And we found that they were fairly, there were some questions that had no correlation or causation at all. And so this year we're doing the whole survey again, but we're adding some granularity to it. Last year it was just what region, North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, etc. This year we're adding a country code. And for those in the US, we're adding a combined statistical metropolitan area grouping so you can get a little closer. Just saying California is good, but there's a big difference between Northern California, LA, and the Bay Area. So we wanted to have a little more granularity of control. Not sure if we're going to get enough statistics on, I don't know how many Wi-Fi guys are working in Arkansas. So maybe we won't have a statistically good sample by individual CSMA or maybe by state. But, let's see what we can come up with if we can get enough data set coming in to see if that is. We added some more granularity on other pieces of information that we're trying to garner to find out how our community is being compensated. We learned a lot of things last year, and feel free to go and click on the show notes and go track down the report from last year. At the end of last year's, we ran a bunch of statistical multivariable linear regression analysis, that big fancy words for, we wanted to come up with a formula that we could plug in and say, if you have X amount of this plus X amount of that, and you do this thing, what's a good idea of what your salary is going to be? We actually ended up with a pretty decent, within plus or minus, say 10% or so, felt really confident that we were within there. And what it came down to is what region you're in, your age, your education, how many nights away from home you sleep in a hotel, and years of experience. And between just those 5 pieces of data, we're able to give you fairly consistent, within plus or minus 10% accuracy of where you fall. This isn't to say that if you fall high above it, that you're an anomaly or that you're too low. For any average, there's going to be people above the average and people below the average, but at least it'll give you some ideas of where it's at. And then we took that tool, that formula that we got garnered from these 1,000+ surveys, and worked with Blake Croney. His company's called Mobidroid, and he turned that data into an actual web page where you can go and plug in your own data and run with it. So this week right now, we're in the middle of a 1-week window of doing another compensation survey, but for this year instead of last year. We would love to have your support. So go into the show notes, just click on the compensation survey link, and it should take, 5-7 minutes tops. There's only a handful of questions there to answer. When we're done, all of the data is going to be shared with the entire community, freely shared. If you want, you can send your email in there, and we will send you a PDF copy of the report for you to look at. And I'm sure we'll also be doing the same multilinear regression analysis and come up with another formula and update Blake Croney's calculator, so we'll have the most up-to-date data for the community to share. So we'd really appreciate to have, we'd like to have more than the 1,000 we had last year, so our statistics get a little better. So if you hear this in the podcast, please go and take the compensation survey. If you know any friends that haven't done it, ask them to do it as well. We just like to gather as much data as we can, so we feel really confident in the report we'll be giving out. Thanks for your time, and really appreciate if you would go and take that survey now. Thank you.
WLAN interview.
Today I'm with Drew Lentz. Drew, how are you?
Hey, Keith. How's it going?
I'm doing good. How's life down there in South Texas?
It's great. We had our first taste of winter. It dropped down to a brisk 48 degrees, and I think that might be the coldest it's going to get all year for us. So everyone put on their furry boots and their jackets and pretended like it was ski season down here, but we're enjoying it.
We've already had our third snow, so
Oh, man.
we're ahead.
That's okay. I just wish the leaves changed colors. It would make it a little bit more scenic in this area.
Oh, our leaves have already changed and dropped, and I was just raking a little bit this weekend and realized there was no more leaves to rake. So a different world there, different world.
Yeah. No,
well, I thought it would be a good chance to get together with you and talk about Wi-Fi Stand and kind of the history of how it came about, where it's at today, and we're going to take it in the future. So is that good for you?
Yeah, that sounds great. We got some fun orders this morning, so it's definitely a fun time to catch up on it.
Oh, good timing then. So let's back up, and prior to Wi-Fi Stand, before there was a Wi-Fi Stand even existing, I've personally tried all sorts of ways to hold my APs in the correct position on the top of a tripod. Painter's poles with little arms. I learned from Jennifer Huber how to take this little bristle pad and pull all the bristles out, then you could screw it onto it, little brackets, etc. And then Wi-Fi Stand came along. It wasn't called that originally, but tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea, where and how the company started.
Well, we, you were there at the beginning, which is great. I remember, we were out at the Interop conference, and I remember seeing a bracket that someone had put together, and it kind of caught the attention of all of us, and we looked at that and wondered who had done that and what they had done with it. And I remember both of us sitting there and taking it apart and looking at it and trying to understand what it was. And that kind of signaled the need for something in the industry to be able to be used to supply Wi-Fi in temporary environments. And so after a bit of research and reaching out to the person who originally made that first version of the bracket that we saw, we made a bunch of different modifications on it, and we ended up with the product that was our version 1 Wi-Fi stand. And we put that out to market. And, as you know, and as I'm sure a lot of the listeners know, we wanted to make sure that we were building something that would not only be used by the industry, but would be appreciated by the industry. So feedback from everyone was absolutely imperative in us putting this together. And so we shipped about 36 demo units out to people like yourself and other bloggers and industry analysts to take a look at it, to see what it did, how it worked, how to make it better. And our version 1 bracket, when we released it in July of last year, it just kind of took off. And quickly what we noticed was about 3 months into it, not only were we filling the need, but you know how it is. You make something and then once you make it, it turns into, well, it would be so much better if it did this. And what about if it did this? And so we really got to get behind some of the ideas that people had put in front of us. And what was great was that not only were we working with industry professionals in the blogosphere, but we were working with some of the largest equipment manufacturers and largest integrators around the world who had some very specific requests, and working side by side with them, we were able to integrate those requests into our second version of the bracket, which features the articulating top bar, a little bit of extra strength on the PVC, a little bit heavier round to connect to the 1/4x20, and then all the accessories that came along with that: the Acme painter's pole adapter, the rail. So if you want to mount something from the ceiling down, you can do that as well. And we continue to look at different ways that we can innovate this product and help serve the industry.
Well, this is a podcast, so visually not very useful unless you're a good describer. So how about if you describe to us what the Wi-Fi, I mean, if someone didn't have one in front of them, I happen to have a couple right here, so I can see them, and I'm sure you can see them in your head. Share with our audience what they look like, how they're built, what's the process of getting one from raw materials to a finished
Absolutely.
product.
So what it is, it's a rectangle. It's 12 by 8. It's 12 inches wide and 8 inches tall. And it has an opening that's 10 inches wide and 6 inches tall. And at the top of that opening, affixed to the bottom of the top rail, I guess you could say, is a 24 millimeter piece of aluminum, milled aluminum, that replicates a drop ceiling T-rail. And basically, it's a rectangle with an open center, and that rail that's up at the top allows you to connect any number of devices, specifically in our case, wireless access points that have mounting kits for T-rail mounts, which uniquely covers about, every Wi-Fi access point out there in the industry, pretty much. And that's important because it's universal by nature, allows people to quickly attach devices to it. And what you do is you snap the device onto the bottom of that Mimic T-rail, and then you run your Ethernet cable down a tripod, and you have a quick place to mount any type of access point wherever you need it.
I find it very, very useful because the idea here is to get an access point in the orientation, dome down, so you can mount it on a ceiling. And it's always, the tripod's easy. It's the part going up.
That's correct.
But how do we get the rotation of the AP? And you do it with this little bracket. For the bottom where it mounts onto basically a photography camera. Well, it's kind of like that. I was interviewing a guy once for telephony, and I just read it wrong, and I said telephony, and he's like, "Well, that's kind of what we are. We're telephonies." So for this photography little bracket there, what made you go with that standard instead of some other piece?
So what we looked at there was where we could get the most use out of it. There are a couple different options, and what's funny is now after we put the bracket out there, all the options that we originally looked at came back as requests from people who wanted to attach to those. So we looked at using an Acme mount, which is the same on top of a painter's pole. We looked at using all thread, that 3/8 inch all thread. We looked at both of those and thought, okay, well, how many people use these normally? And what we settled on was the 1/4x20, which is like you said, it's the same thing on top of a photography mount or a lighting stand. It's basically the same screw that's on any type of tripod kind of globally on the bottom of a camera. If a camera will fit on top of a tripod, the Wi-Fi stand will fit there as well. And that was awesome because we could hit a much larger market by going after that universal approach. But then, like I said, what happened was we had a lot of people who ordered the Acme, 1/4x20 to Acme mount so that they could put the bracket on the mount and put the mount on top of their painter's pole. And then the all thread mount as well, that 3/8 all thread mount. A lot of people like to use those as well. So we went with one, but we kept the others in the back of our mind, and we like to be able to support just about anything we can.
There's another screw type, another bracket for microphone stands. Have you got a request for those yet?
No, I don't. I haven't.
If not, I'm putting one in because there's another set. Just the adapter, the one from a painter's pole. What I found when I'm going really cheap and fast, I just show up at Home Depot, pick up a painter's pole, and I have the adapter on the bottom of my Wi-Fi stand and a roll of duct tape and a painter's pole, and you're ready to go. Not terribly professional looking, but it's very fast.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It's a 5/8 by 27. So there's some that are available online. And I think, I'll tell you, I just found one on Amazon right now. And I mean, we're not necessarily in the business of trying to reinvent the wheel. We want to make it easy for people to get their hands on everything as quickly as possible. But, these things are $4.99. So it might just, I don't know if it's worth it for us to go into production and spin up the mills in order to get, something that we can easily find on Amazon.
No. I just went on Amazon and bought a whole string of adapters so I can go to lighting stands, the 3/8. And the only one that I couldn't find on Amazon was the one you make with the painter's pole adapter. So thanks for having that available. Now you also offer...
No, that's what drove it is we couldn't find any ones that were easily available. And the machine shop that we use, the machine shop where we make all of this is the same machine shop that's used by a number of telecommunications and wireless providers to make their mounts and their mounting kits. And it's right here, on the U.S.-Mexico border. And so they already have all the tooling set up to support a lot of the things that we were looking at. So it allowed us to bring this to market very quickly because we had everything we needed. My business partner and his family are they're the owners of this machine shop. So we were able to capitalize on the fact that we could do this quickly. We could do it locally. We had easy access to raw materials. We could mill and anodize and do just about anything that we needed with this bracket. And that's really, I think that's what gives us the advantage. I mean, we're making a product that's a, pretty inexpensive product, and it's not a very high profit margin that we have in there, but we're able to do it very cost effectively and put it to market and solve a problem that people need. And that was kind of the goal of it.
So what's the production process? It looks like there's 3-4 parts.
Yeah. So there are a couple pieces on there. The first is the standard industrial grade or commercial grade PVC, and we take that PVC and we cut it out and then we mill it with the CNC. We bevel and round the edges so that there's no sharp edges on there. Then the other components are an aluminum T-rail. It's that 24 millimeter rail that we have on there. So we take that and using a press, we press that down. We drill the screw holes and press the screws down through the rail and into the bracket. And then on the bottom, we make a puncture for the round. And that round that goes in the bottom is something we milled that aluminum also. And then we attach it and run a threaded screw through there. And it's ready to go. Now, that's for the version 1. On version 2, it's a little bit different. What we do is we put pins in. We make 2 cuts on the top of the bracket. And then we make 2 holes for the pins, and we set pins in the main rail so that way it can rotate. But we made it so it was tight enough that it didn't get too loose or wobbly, but it wasn't so tight that you couldn't move it. So we worked a lot with making sure that we had the right amount of tension on that top rail of the bracket to articulate, and that's it. And then we wrap it in plastic and ship it off.
I like the version 2 that you were responsive to customers' needs. I before it even came out, I'm like, wow, this thing's a pain. I have to take it apart every single time I put it back in my bag. And now it's just rotate and slide it away.
Yeah.
So nice addition. You also offer like tripods, and so there's a wide variety of tripods, and on different Twitter and Slack groups there's been discussion of how do you get a tripod up high, low, etc. What made you go with the tripods you offer online?
A couple different things. We bought a bunch of them, and so we didn't want to put.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, we didn't want to recommend something that we wouldn't use. You know what I mean? And so we bought a couple of them to figure out what we would get, and for the cost, we wanted to see if we bought cheap, does that mean cheap quality, or if we bought expensive, does that mean great quality? And we ended up in a middle ground. And what we did is we could have made them. Honestly, the machine shop is set up. I mean, we could be fabricating these, but what we did is we found a manufacturer, and it's called PBL, and they manufacture in China and they ship across to the U.S. And what we did is we reached out to their distributor, to the main entry point where all of their big containers show up. And we said, look, we want to resell this online. Do you guys have a reseller program? Ends up that they do. And what we did is we took the price that we found on Amazon, and we knocked a couple of bucks off of it to make it worth purchasing it through us. And we offered it as a drop ship product on our site. So that way it's complementary in the sense that pretty much everyone who buys a Wi-Fi stand is going to want a tripod. So we figured if we could save them some cash and save our customers some time from having to search throughout the web to find a good tripod, then we'd make those available. And we went with an 8-foot and a 10-foot version. One of them is spring-loaded. One of them is air cushioned. The spring-loaded ones, you got to be careful. They'll pop you in the eye. It's not too friendly, but they work really well. And they do extend up to 10 feet and 8 feet. And we figured that was about a normal height. We've had some fun. I mean, if you look up Wi-Fi Stand on Twitter, you'll see all the pictures. People love to post pictures of what we have out there. And so you'll see people who put these things up at 50 feet on tripods and 10 feet and 18 feet and all kinds of different tripod uses. But we're comfortable with the normal one that we offer, and we can do it at a value to our customers. So it makes a lot of sense.
It doesn't. And the one thing I like about it, of some other options I've looked at for holding APs, this one keeps the weight centered right over the center of the tripod stand.
Yep. Which
is really helpful for, especially when you get things up really high. Even off center a couple of inches would cause a lot of stress at the bottom. So
absolutely
well done with that centering process.
Yeah, and that's by design, and that's what we looked at between the version 1 and the version 2 bracket. If you have both of them, look at the rounds. Look at the aluminum round that we use on the bottom there. It's a lot thicker on the version 2, and we did that so it married up to the stands that we use close, a little bit closer by about 3 or 4 millimeters, and we did that just from a stability perspective. When we were originally looking at this, we didn't know if we should make it tall or wide or, short. I've seen some 3D printed models of some things that are out there that have different ways that they hold the access point. But we did want to make sure that we focused on the center of gravity. As my partner, Eric, likes to talk about, he says, some people are a little bit timid about putting a $1,300 access point on a $40 bracket, So we wanted to make sure that it had the ability,
and then lift it way high in the sky.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why the 6-inch hole isn't more like a 3-inch hole or something? The vertical part.
Yes, just because we wanted to make sure that we could work with just about every model of access point that we found out there. And I mean, we're all nerds, right? So you can imagine I've got a stock room full of all kinds of different APs, either from vendor demos or from customers or from different projects that I've worked on. And so when it came time to figure out the height of it, we tried on just about every AP that we could fit in there, and we saw that throat. I don't know why I referred to it as a throat, but that throat is kind of big enough to support everything. And that was until the Meraki MR52, and there's a handful of users that use the 52, and it's 11 inches wide and it doesn't fit on our bracket. So we actually have I don't even think I have it listed on the website, but we had a couple of pretty high profile customers. And I hope you're listening. If you are, thanks for the business, that I can't mention by name, but we had a couple of high profile customers.
But you know who you are.
Yeah, you know who you are. They use the 52, and it's a big AP, and we custom manufactured an XL version that's got a 14-inch opening, so it'll fit the MR52 as well as a couple of other larger APs. So if you need one. But
obviously still centered, so the weight's right over the top of the stand. So
yep. My business partner and co-founder of the company, his name is Eric Slosberg. He's an engineer by trade, and so he really over-engineered this thing. And we laughed about how you probably only really ever have to buy one if that's how you're going to be using, if you're going to use it normally. But that's okay. We like repeat customers and repeat business, and what we found is that it is built to last, and people do appreciate that more than having to replace it over and over again.
Well, I also like the fact that it's a great AP on a stick stand, but there's a whole other market for just temporary installs.
Yeah, we just about 2 months ago, we launched an advertising campaign. We won a local grant through the local McAllen Chamber of Commerce here in McAllen, Texas, where we're located, and we won a $10,000 innovation grant. And what we did with that is we put some of that money towards marketing and product development. And so we started advertising, nothing crazy, just using some AdWords and some online social media stuff. And we built 3 specific landing pages, one for temporary events, one for AP on a stick, and one for education. And we target marketed each one of those. And the temporary event space has just blown up. We got a pretty big Silicon Valley company put in an order this morning, and it was from their temporary events department or their special events department. So, it's pretty cool to see that people are using this whenever they need to go off-site or off campus to go hold some type of whatever it is, some type of gathering, some type of team building event or whatever it is. We've seen a lot of that has resonated with people, as well as conferences, exhibits, pep rallies. People at concerts and live events use this for ticket taking. We've got holiday parades that use it so that they can provide access up and down neighborhoods. We've got a gaming convention that happened for a nonprofit up in, I believe it was in Michigan. They had this huge nonprofit for gamers, and they use these in the middle of a big football or a basketball arena. I mean, there's been all kinds of uses that we've seen it used for. So it's pretty exciting. I'm looking at a list of all the logos of people that have purchased from us, and it reads like a who's who out of the telecom industry and out of the entertainment industry. So it's pretty nice.
So you have your own NASCAR page now.
We do, yeah, and it's filled with some pretty heavy hitters.
Well, that's where we're at today. V2, V1. Now that they're both available, is there a trend you see of people buying one over the other?
You know what? I will say that V1 sales continue to go, and they continue to move. The people who are doing, I think the version 2 is moving closer to people who are doing AP on a stick and who are doing environments where they have to lay down access points and then pick them back up again very quickly. It makes it easy to move them around. So it seems like the V2. I mean, it's selling really well. We've shipped overall with all of our products. We've shipped over 1,000 units. We've shipped to 19 different countries. We've got distributors in the U.S. and in Belgium. We're working with the distributor right now in Switzerland. I believe it's Switzerland. One down in Australia. We've sold a bunch of product into Canada. And so we're taking the feedback from everyone and starting to work on the version 3. There's a couple of really cool modifications that we've made to it. A lot of people asking for different materials, different colors, different sizes. And we have to take it all, into consideration. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to do whatever is most universal and what the most requested features are. And I mean, is all you got to do is tweet at us at WiFi Stand. And if there's something that someone wants to see, or if they use it in a special way, or it needs to be taller, shorter, skinnier, fatter, whatever it is, we pay attention to everything that the market's saying, because, I mean, this is a product that was built for the industry by the industry. So we just get to be the shepherds of it. So it's a lot of fun.
It's a good place to be, and you listened well and adapted accordingly. So I want to thank you for that. What's the future for Wi-Fi Stand have? You got version 3. Anything else coming down the pike?
Yeah. So the version 3, there's some, like I said, there's some modifications on version 3 that we're working on. I don't want to say anything just yet because we haven't solidified any of it. I mean, we've made a couple prototypes here and there. But what I will say is that it looks like we're on the cusp of some pretty good growth. Not only are we doing the targeted marketing, but there's some great relationships that we've been able to build in the industry with suppliers and with distributors. So it'll be really neat to see where we're at in about 6 months. I think there's going to be some neat stuff happening with us, and it's cool. I mean, it's so much fun to watch. This wasn't a project that we were going to make a whole bunch of money off of, and that was never kind of the reason to do it. In all honesty, the reason that Eric and I decided to go after this and start doing it was because we both want Tesla Model X's, and we had to justify to our wives that we wanted a Model X, and the only way we could do it is to show revenue somehow. So we said, you know what, we'll both put in $500 each, and we'll crank up the production on this project. And we'll see if we can get to, a run rate business so we can buy some Teslas. And we're just about there. So we're a little bit over a year old. July 11th was, I guess, our go-to-market. We've been selected as one of the top 20 tech startups at South by Southwest. We've won our local innovation grants. We've gotten a lot of industry support from guys like you and from your whole team at WLPC. And everyone that's used it has something positive to say. So I think the future is really going to be steady, if not more incrementally, fun. So I'm excited.
Well, I wish you luck on your Model X. Yeah, it's good. I like having a goal like that. Well, how can anyone find you either personally or the business online?
WiFiStand.com. And when try and name this thing, right? Like we sat around trying to figure out what we were going to name it. And so I gave my wife a couple of options and I said, what do you think? And she said, well, it's a Wi-Fi stand. I said, well, Wi-Fi stand it is. So I like to thank Jessica for the name.
It's easy to remember too.
Yeah. If you look it up, it's wifistand.com, or you can find us on Twitter at Wi-Fi Stand, or Instagram at Wi-Fi Stand, or on Facebook, facebook.com/Wi-Fi Stand. And anyone that has it, please, we love to see the photos of it in action. And if you don't have one, the easiest way to get one, obviously, is to order it. But another easy way to get it is if you see a picture of one in the wild, take a photo of it and send it in, hashtag it or at Wi-Fi Stand. And if we see someone, kind of mentioning it, we don't mind, being a little friendly with these. So we love to get them out, and we love to get them in people's hands. So if you see one, take a picture. I'll say my favorite picture that I've seen so far was a screenshot from ABC News during the hurricane as it came through Miami. The reporter was standing on the balcony, and he was tethered to the balcony. And up in the top right-hand corner was a Wi-Fi stand with the Cisco AP on it. And I thought that was pretty cool. So
that's very cool. They're obviously using them and taking them on site to do that. That's a cool picture.
Yeah.
Good story there. Obviously showing that it's a success because people use them and like them. Well, thanks for your time today, Drew. I'm glad we were able to hear a little story about Wi-Fi Stand, where it came from. And if you're out there in the audience and you're thinking of, I wish there was this little thing, follow Drew's example and just go for it.
Yeah. And that's, what, there's something at the bottom of our webpage. And I know, you and I have had conversations about this. There's a lot of people in the industry who have access to a number of different things. And like Rob's a great example. Rob Boardman, if there's something that someone wants and they talk about it, maybe Rob can 3D print it. But at the same time, I have an entire machine shop down here where we're running Wi-Fi stands out of. If there's something that someone has an idea for and you need someone to make it or prototype it or work with you on how to build it using huge machinery, let us know, because our industry grows stronger the more people that are out there trying to produce products for each other. So if there's anything that comes out, if anyone ever needs, some help or some guidance in that, we're totally open to it. So, we're open to helping you out. We've got lots of tools and machines and stuff that we can use. So please let your imagination run wild and let us help you guys figure out how to get your own little Tesla.
Wi-Fi question of the day
with Lee Badman.
We're talking about PSK, pre-shared key networks, and kind of the reality that these are not going away. A lot of us like to complain and lament at every chance we get that not enough devices are equipped with the capabilities of doing enterprise security. So we're stuck with this notion of pre-shared keys. They're just not going away, especially when we get into, the coming tidal wave of Internet of Things devices. They're certainly not going to do 802.1x. So my question was, given that it's here to stay, it's not going away as much as we would like to, do you have a strategy or a recommendation for your customers to manage these things? What do you do about them? Keys get stale. How do you face it? And, unsurprisingly, pretty much everybody, certainly the majority, said that the keys just don't ever change. You put them in place and, they'll be there 5 years later if the network is still there 5 years later. Where you did get some variety of opinion and somebody, where somebody might have actually given, I have a strategy. Once a year was mentioned at least a couple of times. We try to change them, once a year, whether it works out or not, is another story. But then probably the most interesting and innovative answer, and this came from a couple of people, was rather than go through the pain of trying to update keys across a bunch of devices and, get into the headache of doing that, they say just come up with a new SSID with a new set of keys, delete the old one, and that forces people to face the reality that, okay, I have to put in this new config, rather than try to, force the editing of what's out there in existing fields that people might be resistant to. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and I'll admit that I had never really considered that up until I threw that question out.
Where did you kind of fall on the spectrum? Like, what's your approach and thoughts so far before you learned that gem?
Well, at home, certainly I'm probably as lazy as everybody else, and I never change them. And then at work, thankfully, we don't have that many networks, and I guess you could say I'm just as lazy at work as I am at home. Human nature prevails.
10 Talks.
Peter Mackenzie, and I love CCI. And I want to just spend these 10 minutes, or 9 minutes and 50 seconds, just giving a bit of love back to CCI. You see, CCI, it gets a lot of bad press, doesn't it? You know, people say CCI is bad, we've got to minimize CCI before we die. CCI, the reason your Wi-Fi sucks. It gets a lot of bad press. So let's give it a bit of love this morning. Let's just talk about what CCI is very quickly. Co-channel interference. You know, 2 access points, adjacent access points here, installed. They're both placed on channel 1. They can both hear each other. We have CCI bad Wi-Fi. Hopefully no one's doing designs like this. So this is bad, yeah? Everybody would agree we've got an access point on channel 6, another access point on channel 6, what BSS1 on this one, BSS2 there, and we would say it is bad. A big CCI warning. Bad Fi. We agree that's bad, yeah? Oh, good. My question is then, is this okay? 1 access point on channel 6, 2 BSSs, and some clients connected. Do we design networks like this? Hands up who's designed a network like this. Is that bad? My question is, do we have CCI there? Yes, we do. Are they equal? We have got BSS1 on channel 6. First picture I showed you, bad CCI. This is what we do. But the thing is, CCI, these are pretty much equal, aren't they? Have a think about it. They're pretty much the same scenario. You've got the same number of stations, the same number of BSSs, so the same number of beacons being transmitted, and you've got the same number of clients contending for the access medium. Let's just have a look at another scenario then. How about these? Are these equal? I've got here, again, 2 access points on channel 6, separate BSSs, but here I've just got 1 BSS. Both diagrams show 10 stations contending for access on channel 6. Which has the most CCI?
Same CCI, the one on the left has twice the cost.
The one on the left has twice the beacons and also twice the price, yes, in terms of how many APs. That is very correct. But they both have CCI, and that's the thing I want to do. Let's have a look at something else, and which is worse here. Here we've got 6 stations, twice the cost, I agree with Keith, but we've got 6 stations contending for channel 6, and here we've got 10 stations contending for channel 6. I'm just proposing corrections here, but which of these theoretically is worse in terms of Wi-Fi performance? And you know, the more stations we contend for access, the more we're going to have to share the medium. So, co-channel interference. Some people say it should be renamed co-channel contention is a better name, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about stations contending for access to the same medium. But, you know, it's really hard to get rid of old names. But I want to suggest there's maybe an older name for co-channel interference that you get in the 802.11 standard, and that's the distributed coordination function. The distributed coordination function is just a method we go through to contend for access to the wireless medium. And when I was first learning about Wi-Fi back in 2001, one of the things that made me fall in love with Wi-Fi was just learning how it worked and learning things like DCF mode and the way that stations do have to contend for access. So let me just, before I finish, I don't need to get me wrong. I am not saying that I am recognizing that if you've got 2 adjacent APs on separate channels, this is far better than having 2 APs on the same channel. Okay? I just want to be clear. But it doesn't mean that CCI is always bad. Okay? Instead of trying to concentrate on minimizing CCI at all costs, what we really need to do, what's the important thing, is actually to try and minimize the number of clients per channel within our environment. Because the more we minimize the number of or the number of stations at least that are operating per channel. That's what's going to increase our performance. Let me just try and talk about a couple more scenarios where I think you can try and over-engineer a solution to minimize CCI. Here's a CCI heat map. In this scenario, just for those back, I'll just point out that AP up here is on channel 1. You might be able to see there's an AP down here on channel 1, and there's one over here. And I'm just showing the channel overlap map for the APs on channel 1. I've got those selected. And it's showing me that up here we have CCI. I can hear more than one AP on channel 1. The question is that a problem? Well, when you're up here, hopefully you're going to be connected to this AP up here on channel 6, or even possibly to this guy down here on channel 11. But in this area over here, you're never going to be connected on channel 1. Not if your wireless network's designed right and you've designed it to the roaming requirements and you've got all your configuration right. So in one sense, does it matter that I've got CCI there? Because I shouldn't ever be connected on channel 1. But I've seen people try and get rid of this grey at all costs. And what they end up doing is minimising their coverage. So actually, in Ekahau, I just want to say, if you select associated channel on this view, it'll get rid of that grey area for you. Because it just looks to say, do I have CCI on my associated channel of what I should be associated to in that area? And that would give you back your nice green heat map. If you haven't seen that configuration, I thought I'd point it out. Second thing, disabling 2.4 gig radios. I do it. I'm not saying, again, it's a bad thing to do, but think about the impact of disabling a 2.4 gig radio. I've got channel 1 here, channel 11 AP, channel 6, and channel 1. Now, these might be dual radio APs. I'm just showing the 2.4 gig channels. They're all on separate 5 gig channels. Connected to these 2.4 gig radios is 20 APs. That's roughly the sort of user density of 2.4 gig clients in this environment. It's only the corner of a building, so just to look at. Now, in this environment, I have co-channel interference between these two APs. They can hear each other. And it is a problem. So what do? I say, well, okay, these can hear each other, so I'm going to disable my 2.4 gig radio on this AP, because I have co-channel interference. My question is, doing that, what happens to the clients that were connected to this AP, those 20 clients? Because I've got 20 clients connected to each AP before I disable the radio. I've got 40 clients and 2 APs contending for access to channel 1, haven't I? That's what I've got. If I disable that one, what happens to those clients? They're going to reassociate somewhere else, aren't they? So now they reassociate to channel 6. Now I've got 40 clients connecting to channel 6. And I've got a wasp trying to attack me up here. Obviously doesn't agree with what I'm saying. So you've got, he does like, he likes me. He's a CCI lover too. He loves CCI. So we've got now 40 devices. All we've done is move it to 40 clients contending on channel 6. But have we made it worse? When all my clients around here are contending, they're contending at a high data rate because my clients are located over here. My clients that were located over here, which could also operate at a high data rate to that AP, so I've now, when they were connected both to channel 1, although they were seeing each other and all contending together on channel 1, they were contending at high data rates because they were close to the AP they were associated to. Now, these clients down here are further away from channel 6, and though I've moved the 40 clients to channel 6, they're now operating at a lower data rate, and therefore the contention has become worse. That's pretty much what I've got to say. Why do I love CCI? Because it's basically DCF in action, which is so fundamental to how Wi-Fi works, and Wi-Fi wouldn't work without it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Wireless LAN Pros for all the latest news and updates, and also connect directly with Keith on Twitter at Keith R. Parsons. Head over to www.wlanpros.com for this episode's show notes, as well as the latest in all things Wi-Fi.